Men didn't stop responding to guilt because they suddenly stopped caring about right and wrong. Guilt stopped working because too many men started realizing that the accusation often had very little to do with what they had actually done. So the tactic had to change. Now, you don't necessarily have to convince a man that he's guilty. You only have to make him afraid of what could happen if somebody decides to describe his behavior in the worst possible way. I think that's what a lot of men are feeling right now. They're not walking around thinking they're doing something wrong. They're walking around wondering how something completely normal could be misinterpreted later. A man can enter a conversation with no bad intentions whatsoever and still feel like he has to measure every single word he says. He knows that what he says could be repeated later without the tone or context. Just think about it. If he speaks too plainly, he could be called aggressive. If he sets a boundary, will somebody call him controlling? Probably. If he disagrees, will that disagreement be turned into evidence that he's angry or unstable or unsafe? Uncertainty is the new tactic. Uncertainty. Guilt tells you that you did something wrong and gives you a chance to correct it. This is different. This tells you that you may not find out that you broke a rule until somebody accuses you of breaking it later. And the rule itself is rarely explained beforehand. Men are just expected to somehow know what is acceptable at all times, even though the standard can be changed depending on who's upset, right? How they feel that day, and how they choose to tell the story afterward. For a long time, guilt worked because most men genuinely wanted to do the right thing. If a man was told that he was being selfish, emotionally unavailable, or immature, yeah, he would usually take that seriously. He would think about it. He might apologize even, change his behavior, and just come to a compromise. Try to meet the other person halfway. Then he started noticing that none of it actually solved anything. He apologized, but the argument continued because a new issue suddenly appeared. He compromised, but before long, that compromise was treated like the bare minimum. He did what he was asked to do, and somehow that still wasn't enough. Maybe he did it with the wrong attitude. Maybe his tone was off, right? Maybe he should have done it sooner. He communicated, but apparently he didn't communicate the right way. After enough of that, a man starts realizing that the problem isn't that he keeps failing to meet the standard, it's that the standard keeps changing. See, guilt only works as long as he believes his behavior is the reason everything keeps going wrong. Once he notices that the criticism continues no matter what he changes, he stops automatically assuming that he must be the problem. But the people who got their way by making him feel guilty, they still need him to go along with what they want. So they start getting inside his head before he even does anything. Instead of making him feel ashamed after he does something, they make him question himself before he does anything at all. You can see this all over modern dating, right? Men are expected to approach women, to take the lead, to show confidence, right? To move the interaction forward. But at the same time, a man is also expected to know exactly how much attention is wanted before the woman has clearly told him. He's expected to make the first move, but somehow he's also supposed to know ahead of time whether she wants him to. If he hangs back, well, then he lacks confidence. But if he moves things forward and she isn't interested, then he crosses a line. And that line changes from one woman to the next. I'm not talking about obvious boundaries. Most men understand that no means no. Okay? We're not imbeciles. We know when somebody is clearly uncomfortable. I'm talking about all the situations where the rules only seem obvious after the woman has already decided whether she likes him. Just think about it. The same exact joke, it could be funny and charming when she's attracted to him, but creepy when he isn't, or when she isn't. The same confidence, it can feel exciting coming from one man and threatening coming from another, even when their behavior is identical. Then he's told that he should have known the difference. But how is he supposed to know when nobody can explain the rule until after he's already unknowingly broken it? After dealing with that enough times, men become more guarded. They stop being spontaneous and approaching women. They no longer trust themselves to read situations, so they start monitoring everything they say and do in real time. Just think about it. One part of a man is trying to have a normal conversation with a woman, while the other part is standing outside of it, wondering how every joke, question, or comment might be described later if the interaction doesn't go well. At that point, it's no longer a natural interaction because simultaneously he's performing risk management. The same thing happens in relationships, right? When men are constantly told that they need to open up and be more vulnerable. A man finally does it because he believes he's talking to someone who actually loves him and he can trust. He tells her what he's afraid of. He admits something he regrets. Maybe he talks about an insecurity or something in his life that he doesn't know how to handle. Then they get into an argument 3 months later, and suddenly she throws it back in his face. The insecurity he trusted her with is now evidence that he's weak and incapable of handling the relationship. Something he shared during a private moment has been pulled into a completely unrelated argument because she knows it will hurt him. He remembers that. It sticks with him. What he takes away from the experience is that opening up to a woman gives her ammunition she may use against him later. Then, when he becomes more guarded, people criticize him for being emotionally closed off. Nobody asks what happened the last time he let his guard down. That part of the story conveniently gets left out. People want to talk about the way the man acts now, but they rarely care about what happened to make him act that way. And this becomes much more serious when the same fear follows him into work or therapy or the courtroom. The stakes are raised. A man at work may think twice before helping a female colleague, right? He may avoid meeting with her alone and keeping every conversation that he has with her in writing, right? Over email, over Slack. And he should. To not do so would be idiotic. But yet, people can still call that paranoia or say that he's overreacting. But he's looking at what he has to gain compared to what he could lose. Helping somebody, yeah, it might feel worthwhile, but not if one misunderstanding could put his entire reputation or career at risk. A man doesn't have to believe that every interaction is going to end with somebody accusing him of something. He only has to know it could happen once, and that one accusation could be enough to destroy him. You don't expect your house to burn down, but you still buy insurance because you know what you stand to lose if it does. A lot of men are starting to look at their careers, relationships, and their reputations the same way. Therapy can create a similar problem because men are often judged not only by what they say, but by whether they express it in the way the therapist expects them to. A man can walk into a session, explain exactly what's happening, and start talking about how to fix it. That may be how he deals with problems, but the therapist can interpret it as him avoiding his emotions. Right? Whatever. They come up with all kinds of different wacky ideas and interpretations. But even his reaction can be used against him. So telling the truth is no longer enough. He also has to present it with the right tone, the right amount of emotion, and in whatever way the person sitting across from him has decided a healthy man is supposed to communicate. That becomes very dangerous when this person has influence over his job, his marriage, or whether he gets to see his children. It only takes a handful of words in a report or an evaluation to completely change how other people see him, right? How a judge sees him, how a boss sees him. These words like defensive, rigid, resistant, emotionally unavailable, lacking empathy. Now, none of those words accuse him of doing one specific terrible thing, but enough of them together, and they create the picture of a man who cannot be trusted. And once that picture has been created, almost anything he does can be used to confirm it, whether it's true or not. Whatever he does gets used to confirm what they already think, right? Fulfills their confirmation bias. There is no response he can give that cannot be worked back into the original conclusion. Now, he isn't defending himself against something that he actually did. He's trying to prove that somebody else's opinion of his personality is wrong. And that is much harder to fight, because an opinion doesn't have to be proven the way a direct accusation does. This is why uncertainty can control a man more effectively than guilt can. Guilt only worked when he believed he'd done something wrong. Now, it barely matters what he believes. He can know the accusation is false and still understand that it may cost him his job, his money, his reputation, or time with his children. He can be suspended from work without pay while everyone looks into it, right? Does an investigation, even when he knows there's nothing to find. Or a father, he can lose months and months of parenting time while the court tries to determine whether an allegation has any truth to it. I know, I've been there. And maybe he gets cleared of everything eventually, but that doesn't put everything back the way it was. Nobody returns the paychecks he missed. He doesn't get those months with his child back. The legal bills, they're still sitting there. Okay? And the people who heard the accusation, they may never hear how the case actually ended. By the time the truth comes out, the accusation has done the damage. It has done what it was intended to do, to destroy him. It also takes very little effort to make the original claim. All it takes is for someone just to tell a short emotional story in a few sentences. Answering it may require months of text messages, dates, receipts, witnesses, court filings, and explanations about what was happening before and after the moment being described. Most people will hear the accusation. Far fewer will sit through the entire defense. Other men, they watch this happen and learn from it. They see somebody lose their career, before any facts are established, right? They see fathers spending years and thousands of dollars trying to prove something never happened. They watch a man's name get destroyed online from a 30-second clip taken out of context. Nobody has to sit these men down and explain the lesson. They understand it. So they start protecting themselves in ways that would have seemed ridiculous years ago. They save messages and keep records of ordinary conversations. These fathers, they document routine parenting time exchanges because they know from experience that a minor disagreement can be twisted and used against them later. Men at work, they avoid situations where they could be alone with a female colleague who might misread the interaction. Men who are in relationships, they become much more careful about what they reveal and who they trust with it. Then people look at how guarded men have become and wonder why they seem so distant and checked out. It's because being a decent person, a decent man with good intentions is no longer good enough. A man can mean well, and he can be reasonable and still find himself defending someone else's version of what happened. That's one more reason men are discreetly removing themselves from these situations. Situations that previous generations entered without thinking twice. Freaking boomers. So yeah, we're dating less. We're putting off having families, right? Turning down even leadership positions, and just keeping fewer people close to us. And it's not this Peter Pan syndrome. It's not fear of responsibility. These men have decided that the possible consequences are no longer worth the risk. The usual response is that men are scared of responsibility or they refuse to grow up. No. That doesn't hold up when you look at how much responsibility men still take on in every other part of life. Men start businesses, they raise children, they work dangerous jobs. They spend years providing for the people that they love, often at the expense of their own time, health, and peace of mind. Responsibility itself was never the problem. The problem is being made responsible for how everything turns out while somebody else gets to decide what the rules are, change them whenever they want, and judge whether he followed them correctly or not. A man can be told that the health of his relationship depends on him, but the moment he tries to set any expectations for how disagreement should be handled, he's labeled controlling. Or in the workplace, he's expected to lead a team and make difficult decisions, but he can be punished because of somebody's feelings, right? Somebody didn't like how his leadership made them feel. Then HR gets roped into it. A father may be expected to provide, protect, cooperate, stay calm, and remain patient through everything. Meanwhile, some of the most important decisions about his child are being made by people who barely know him outside of whatever somebody else wrote in a report. More men are starting to look at these arrangements and say, no, that won't be me. That's a terrible deal. This uncertainty, it continues as long as a man believes there must have been some perfect thing he could have said or done that would have protected him. So what does he do? He goes back over the conversation in his head. He rewrites the message 5 different ways. He wonders whether he showed too much interest, right? Came on too strong, waited too long, or didn't take enough initiative. He keeps searching for the exact response that would have changed the outcome. And while he does that, he never stops to consider that the other person may not have been judging him fairly to begin with. Eventually, men stop asking what they should have done differently and start asking a much simpler question. Like, what is the payoff for staying in a relationship where every single thing they say has to be checked before it leaves their mouth? Everything has to be audited. They constantly second guess themselves. Why keep giving everything to a job when one complaint from the wrong person could outweigh 20 years of hard work and loyalty? At some point, it simply isn't worth the trouble anymore. And that's after you ask yourself that question and you change the way that you see everything, that's where all of this starts losing its stronghold on him. Wish my neighbor would stop doing that with his bike. It's really annoying. But yeah, that's where all of this starts losing its stranglehold on him. Anger still keeps a man tied to the situation because he wants somebody to admit what happened. He wants an apology. He wants justice. Indifference is different. Once he stops needing them to admit he was right, there isn't much left for them to hold over him. He doesn't need to spend every single day attacking people or ranting about how unfair the system is. He can walk away and put that energy somewhere useful. His work, his health, his children, his friends, the people who have shown that they can be trusted. That kind of man is much harder to push around. He no longer cares whether they approve of him. Once he's willing to walk away from all of that, it no longer matters whether they accept him or not. Once he stops building his life around how strangers and institutions see him, their tactic runs into the same exact problem that guilt did. It no longer gets the response it was supposed to get. But what I want to make crystal clear here is that the answer isn't to walk through life assuming that everybody is dangerous. But there is another trap here. If a man becomes so afraid of being betrayed that he builds his whole life, his entire life, around preventing it, then the fear is still running his life. He may be moving in the opposite direction, but he's still being controlled by the same thing. That doesn't mean he should assume every woman, employer, or therapist is out to get him. Plenty of people deal with men honestly, they value what they bring to the table, and they don't assume there's something wrong with them just because they think and communicate like men. The point isn't to trust nobody. It's to stop trusting people before they've given you a reason to. Watch how somebody behaves over time. Be observant. Do they hold themselves to the same standard that they hold you to? Do they keep private things private? When there's a misunderstanding, do they actually try to clear it up? Or does their version of events always seem to work in their favor? And when your job, your money, your reputation, and your children are involved, keep messages and records. Do it. Don't be stupid. A man also has to stop treating another person's interpretation of him as if it automatically outranks his own judgment. This is where he has to become more selective about who gets access to him. Stop wasting time trying to prove your intentions to people who seem determined to see the worst in them and the worst in you. When that keeps happening, stop giving that person more chances to do the same thing. The whole thing only works by keeping a man stuck inside his own head. Don't get stuck inside your head. And don't second guess yourself.